Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Caregiver Coffee Chat Podcast. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. And this week, I am so excited, guys, for my guest because I don't have just one guest. I have two. I have an amazing mother-daughter duo. Their names are Claire and Amaranthia, and they are from Sista Creatives Rising. And their story, oh my gosh, talk about dealing with a hard situation. They have gone through abuse and bullying, and yet they are still being so ambitious women, if you will, and are passionate about helping marginalized Black women heal through, I think this is so beautiful, art. They're using art as an outlet to help women heal from these really horrible, traumatic experiences. And I think this is so underrated, guys. When we talk about healing from trauma related to being a caregiver, to abuse or neglect or bullying, we don't obviously often talk about how we do that. And I think it's so cool that they are putting an emphasis on, okay, you need to have a healthy outlet where you feel safe, and and there's no rules. That's the cool thing I think about with art, is that it's beautiful. There's no rules, and whatever you need to express, you can express. And women who have gone, or families, because I'm going to include these two in here because they're a family and they've gone through it together. I think it's so important that they have that, families or even just women in general have a safe place to say, hey, I've been through this and I need a place to vent it and get it out, because holding it in doesn't serve you either. So Claire, Amaranthia, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm so excited that you guys are here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, so could you tell us a little bit about your, we'll emphasize on we'll get to the business second, but let's kind of talk about your story, because you guys have a very complicated story. And I think since you've had, for you, Amaranthia especially, since you've had some international experiences and what your trauma and healing and your road to healing has been on, or that you had to go through, I should say. My brain's getting ahead of my mouth here. Sorry, guys. That's unique. That's unique. And so I don't think many people go through that experience, because not everyone lives internationally. So we'll start with Claire, and then I want to touch on Amaranthia, but so one at a time. Why don't you guys share a little bit about your trauma and your experiences, because that's going to tie into how we get into the business, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Yes. So I'm Claire, and I was born in Barbados. I'm going to be 60 years old next week.
This week.
Oh, shoot. Yes. Saturday.
Yes.
Already. Yes. I'm going to be 60. And so I was born under domestic violence. My father was the aggressor. And I saw my mom being abused from very early, and we were always running. My mom was always running with my younger brother and I to get away from it. And I just, from a very early age, because I would throw my body in front of my mom, and I would take a lot of the blows, because it was always a very strong child, a very strong person. And I would throw my body in front of my mom whenever it would happen. And over the years, I just was like, one day I'm going to get out of this. One day I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to help my mom. And I remembered the first time it happened, a baby suddenly appeared on my mom's on our doorstep, and that was the time we ran to a family member. And it was there that my father came back for my mom, and he started to beat her, and I could hear it from when I was sleeping. And that, in the middle of that, there was this light that was burning, candle, a kerosene lamp, something. And I remember that light made me feel comforted, even though I felt I heard the noise outside of my mom screaming. And that inspired me to, even though that as the years went on, the blows kept coming, the violence kept getting worse. And it inspired me as I got older, that light to look forward and to know that there's something better. I don't know how, but I continued determining that I would one day go back and help my mom. When I turned like 15, we totally separated. My brother was put out on the street. I turned 15, dropped out of school. Things got worse. I ended up in bad situations from there. And I said, one day I'm going to write, and I'm going to become a well-known writer, and I'm going to come back and help my mom. And I'm also going to help other women that go through this, And so I went into my 20s. I got off the island. I got to the United States, and I made a bad decision and overstayed a visa, and didn't think about the consequences of that. And then I had to face that. And I had people who heard my story and helped me and advocated for me. And I went back to Barbados, faced it, and was able to get back and come back and go to college. Because when I was illegal, I got my GED and SAT. So I came back, went to college. People saw, and I started to tell my story at college in Pennsylvania, California University of Pennsylvania. Someone saw my work from Mount Holyoke, recommended me for the Francis Perkins Scholar program. And Francis Perkins Scholar was the first female Secretary of Labor under Roosevelt. So they have a program for older women returning who have had experiences like mine, who've had journeys like mine. I told my story, and with my SATs and GED, got into the program. And for 4 years, I developed this program that told my story. And in the end, I wrote a play, and the play was called Shadows of Voodoo. And that was the beginning of my journey. It took me to Senegal, to the door of no return, Gorée Island, where the slaves were first sent off. And it was there that I redetermined that I would break the pattern of intergenerational abuse. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to break it through my work. And then Amaranthia was born. Before I graduated, I was 36. She was born. And it was from there that I started to tell her about my journey. And so she got inspired by it. And then it came turn for her to be in high school, and her bullying started. She started doing her work inspired by my work. And it brought us to this point where we now have a show, Art of Mind and Sista Creatives, which is all linked to that beginning. It goes all the way back
to the 90s,
to the 90s, to the work that I did in college, and all the way back to when I was a child, wanting to inspire to help my mom and to help other women.
Wow.
My
gosh. Okay. What really struck out to me when you were sharing your story, Claire, was when you said that you had this burning light, you had this nudge. Being a Christian, for me, I would see that as a nudge from the Lord. God puts those hearts and those nudges and those dreams and ambitions in your heart for no reason. But I love that you touched on a light, because I do understand that not everyone has the same beliefs. And listen, we accept and respect everybody here on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
So just a shout out, no bullying, no hate in the comments, guys, for anybody that does not align with either my beliefs or Claire and Amanthia's, because we're unique individuals and we all have a beautiful light that needs to be respected. But what stuck out to me is that even in that early time, it's like you knew. And I think that is so important, guys, that your calling, as it were, it can happen at any age, later in life, early in age. I know with my first career, I knew at 10, I wanted 3 things. I wanted to be married, I wanted to have children, and I wanted a career in healthcare. And I did end up getting all 3. It took a little longer for the marriage and the children, but my career, I was a former certified nursing assistant for 15 years and I loved it. Did I go on to become a doctor or nurse like I thought I would be? No, because, with my learning challenges, Amaranthia, I speak to you too, is because I had some learning challenges as well, but I still found a way to do it, to be creative and still get a career and be a part of something that I really love. I still learned a lot, and I still had to learn a lot to be able to take care of people, right? Obviously in a medical profession and be licensed by the state. So it doesn't matter whether you're 10, whether you're almost 60, it does not matter. Okay. Any time can happen for a new calling, a new road, a new path. Okay. And I think that's so important to remember when you are going through hard situations, be it healing from domestic and childhood abuse or bullying, or even just the stress and overwhelm of being an unexpected caregiver and stay-at-home mom at a younger age. Any situations, obviously we're in 2 different situations, but still there's trauma, there's unexpectedness, and there's hope. There's hope. So Claire, we've touched on you a little bit, so let's shift to Amaranthia. I want to hear a little bit from Amaranthia about her story, because again, with the international piece and that struggle for identity, Amaranthia, my heart, when I read your story, my heart just went out to you, because I went through some really hardcore teasing, bullying when I was in 1st through 5th grade. I'm internationally adopted from South Korea. And I came to the States when I was 4 months old, but 1st to 5th grade were hell, because I was predominantly in a school that was Hispanic and white kids, and they'd never seen an Asian kid, and acceptance was really hard. So I didn't really get any like true friends until I was well into my 20s. As sad as that is, high school was not fun either. Even though I was in a Christian school, it was still hard. So I understand that identity shift of not being accepted. Where do you fit in? You don't really fit in with any clique or any crowd. How do you navigate that? And it feels very isolating and alone, because you want to share that with somebody, but when you're being excluded, it's tough. It's tough to do that. And especially if you don't have that from the beginning, earlier on in childhood, it definitely impacts, like I know from my relationship with my husband later on in life and other friends, it was tough to trust. It's like, is this person going to really stick around, or are they just going to ditch and run? Yeah. So that's really hard. So Amaranthia, let's hear a little bit about your story and your perspective on things.
Yeah. So when I was born in 99, I had a lot of health issues from the get-go. I was dealing with eczema and stomach problems and all kinds of things. And as I got older, then I started kind of exhibiting signs of anxiety. And I was just a very anxious child, didn't like to give eye contact. And I think around in the 2000s, we were living in Northampton, Massachusetts, and we moved to Manchester, Connecticut, and we had apartments there. And my dad got an opportunity to be an expat in Japan. And so in 2004, we decided to move there. And he was working in IT, I think with Hartford, right? Mm-hmm. So we were there for like 2.5 years. So 2004 to middle of 2006, I went to international school, Nishimashi International School. Before that, I was in PAL International, which was like a international preschool. So when I was in America, my mom told me that kids wouldn't want to play with me simply because I was Black. So kids would just avoid me and tease me. And so I didn't fully remember. I would have like kind of little short memories of that. But when I went to Japan, it was very different, because I was in this massive, diverse international school. So I was meeting kids from
Germany,
Hong Kong,
Sweden,
London,
Australia,
Nigeria. So I was meeting kids from all over the world. Because consistently, though, the kids that would give me a hard time were the American kids. Every other kid, because they had met all these other cultures and they would participate in these cultural experiences, no problem. But
American white kids
always gave me the issue, and their parents. Mm-hmm. So I was able to have friends, and I was totally immersed in the culture. And it was a foundation for my artwork. We're also practice Japanese Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And so when we moved there, coincidentally, it made it so we were actually able to see where our practice came from.
Yeah.
So a lot of we were involved in like cultural festivals. Mm-hmm. I was involved in, I think I presented something to
the princess,
the Japanese princess.
She was chosen to present flowers.
Yeah.
To the princess of Japan.
And how cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And it was, I was like maybe 4 or 5. I can't remember.
No, you were about 5, 6.
Yeah. And I was got to participate in different festivals, and there was always art events. There was always galleries from different cultures, where it was African cultures. I don't remember what specific African culture, There was always international art.
Mhm.
I remember this exhibit with bears. There was just these bear sculptures that represented different flags of the world.
Mhm.
And just memories like that. It was just heavily influenced my art, along with the anime and manga, Pokemon, just totally being immersed in that. And
Yeah, definitely.
so the financial crisis hit,
Mhm.
and I started exhibiting these really bad health issues of constant nosebleeds, and
Out of
eventually
nowhere.
high blood pressure out of
Mhm.
nowhere, only 6 or 7, and early puberty as well.
Yeah.
It was very bad. And so when we came back to America, we moved to Canton, Connecticut. And when I was in Canton, that was a massive change, because I went from a private school international setting to
Taking the school bus.
taking the school bus,
Yes.
meeting kids that I didn't see myself in the classroom.
Mm-mm.
I was like the only Black girl in my
Mm-mm.
classroom,
Mhm.
if not most of the time,
And
almost all the time.
There was one Black kid that was bussed in from Hartford,
Yes.
but
Mhm.
she was mostly around white kids.
Yeah. So what happened was that I was immediately hearing slurs, the N-word, kids making fun of my hair, kids refusing to play with me, making fun of me because I was a tomboy, and also because I was exhibiting not American kid behavior. I was exhibiting more stuff that you'd see with a Japanese kid or international kid that was immersed in East Asian culture. So no one understood me.
She would give the peace signs, and like this, when she took a picture, she would do the Japanese.
Yes. Very into video games and anime and stuff, and no one was into that at the
Mhm.
time where I was. So it was just all these different things combined. So it was racism, it was sexism, it was people telling me I was gonna go to hell because I'm Buddhist. Like only 6 years old, experiencing this kind of stuff. So
Ugh.
And there was only one other Black kid that was there to a boy.
Yes, there was 2 Black kids I knew.
2, yeah.
One, he had a lot of health issues going on, so I didn't really get to connect with him. And then this other kid, she felt I wasn't Black enough, so the kid who was bussed in, and so she started spitting on me and attacking me, and I wanted to be her friend because I was like, well, I'm so being a better Black girl, and immediately just treated me horribly, and would tease me and use the other white kids in the room to make fun of me. So I also had experiences with teachers bullying me as well. And so we moved to New Hampshire because my dad was struggling with his job after coming back, because they didn't want to give him the offer that they promised, and he was experiencing racism at his job. So they were constantly singling him out. And eventually we decided, you know what, we have to find another job that will relocate. So we moved to New Hampshire, not knowing that New Hampshire is less than 2% Black.
Didn't have time to research.
We didn't have time to research. We were like, we have to move. And because of my health issues, it kept getting worse and worse. And the doctors in New Hampshire were recommended to us that they would be better suited.
Exactly.
So we moved there. Bullying got worse. The slurs, the attacks, being pushed at the bus stop that happened in middle school. I was constantly being pushed into the road. There was all kinds of things that were happening. And then it was hard for my mom because she was experiencing it alongside me.
Exactly. And then when we moved here, the real estate people gave us an apartment that we didn't know that had been flooded, and it had mold in it, and we got sick from that.
Oh, great.
Yes. So there was all this, I had these health issues, and then this stuff was happening with the apartment, and kids refused to hang out with me again. I was being paired with the only Black kid in the classroom who absolutely hated me because she thought she didn't like that I was a tomboy. And so it was the same thing all over again, using kids to make fun of me. So I just didn't have friends consistently. The few friends that I had would steal my artwork. They would steal my creations. So, and I took art very seriously because the only saving grace I had was my art. and, the support from my parents, particularly my mom. So in 5th grade, as it came to a head and I lost friendships because people kept stealing my work, I showed my artwork to my art teacher. And then my mom presented it to him as well. And he was like, I need to turn this into an art show.
Yeah, because I told him I'd been collecting all the work that she was doing. It was a massive collection.
And she told him about the bullying as well. So he decided, I'm going to make this art show. We have a town meeting every Friday and all the kids would come together. And so he said, we're at this town meeting with all the teachers and kids. I'm going to make this first art show that we've ever had. And it's just going to be a presentation. And we put this presentation up. All these kids started saying, ooh and ah, and they were, oh my God, this is really cool. And they started talking to me. And I was like, wait, this is really cool. Like people are acknowledging me because of my art. And I knew at that moment, it was like kind of similar to that light that you had. That I felt something shift.
The seed was planted.
Yes. And so I decided I want to do art. And when I went into,
because it seemed like it was your voice.
It was my, yes. And so because I was so shy, I couldn't really speak to people. When I went into middle school, bullying got worse. And I started seeing ableism without knowing what it was. I started seeing sexism, misogyny, more racism towards all groups, because then we had a slight bit more diversity. And so I decided to take this project and called Do You Know Who I Am? And I took this project that was a presentation for kids to tell their stories through whatever they're doing, art, sports, whatever, to tell their story of like, I'm human too.
Yeah, instead of bullying, find out who's sitting next to you.
Learn their story.
I love that. I love that. Giving them a voice.
Yes. And when we presented it, I got to present it to a new school that came up right next to the middle school. Is at their opening ceremony. I got to present it to different classrooms. But then when we presented it to this particular set of teachers.
Oh, they wanted to put it on the curriculum.
Yes, they wanted to put it onto the curriculum. And then they wanted me to, I think, tour
the whole school.
Not only the middle school, but other schools.
Yeah.
But then when we presented to a certain set of teachers, I had a presentation, I had an essay. The presentation was for the kids, the presentation and the essay was for the teachers. And most of the teachers loved it because I was explaining to them what was happening race-wise, ableism-wise, sexism-wise with the kids and how it was hidden.
She was telling them the things they couldn't see.
Yeah, or the things they were seeing but were ignoring. Yes. There were teachers that were intentionally ignoring it and just didn't care to do anything about it. So I presented to a certain set of teachers, 8th grade teachers, who obviously were dealing with the older kids that were perpetuating the most of the bullying. And after the presentation, started walking out, refused to interact with me. I was like 13 at the time. And so having that happen to a little kid was very traumatizing. And then immediately after, the principal said, we're done with this project. And it got completely shut down and teachers and students started isolating me all over again. I lost a lot of friends. And I got people who thought the few friends that I thought that I had, they left, and I became very ill. And I started exhibiting signs of complex PTSD, panic disorder, which it took me until like 21 to get diagnosed with. And I had no choice to be homeschooled online.
That pressure was,
too much. Yeah. No, you had to do what you need to do for your health because it's not, whenever you're dealing with trauma of any sort or a hard experience of any sort, it's toxic if you stay in that situation. So you had to remove it. And even though that's beneficial to remove the toxicity, it does mean that there's going to be other things that come up in terms of, okay, you're home all the time. You're not having that social interaction like you did. So those skills are not being addressed to some degree. So it's kind of a give and take, you know what I mean?
So it's agoraphobia.
yeah, it's like you're trying to deal with one problem, but then to address
Right.
that one problem, it means taking this step and this action. But then you
Exactly.
get it opens a whole nother can of worms of other problems.
That's
So
right.
I think, and I think that's amazing though, that even though throughout this experience though, Arminthia, your art is still your outlet. You still go back to it, and it's what's kept you going. It's what's
That's
kept
right.
you going. And I think for those listening, even if it's not art, what is one thing that you can do to give yourself an outlet? Because we all need to cope. It's interesting. I know for me, with dealing with what I've been through, my business has become my outlet. It's allowed me to be creative. And do things that I never thought I would do. There's people that go to school to market, to write copy, to to coach and all these other things. And I'm doing that from scratch with no BA, no master's. And how cool is that? And it's a new ministry. So I think that it's important to remember that even though you start in one place, God's going to take it and shift it and just project you in a whole different way. And that's the
Right.
cool thing, is that you don't know where the journey is going to go. I think for you guys are just, with your rebranding and your launching of your website and just having this new outlet to tell your story to more people, to help more people. I think you're just both just scratching the surface of what is possible in this journey for both of you. And I think I hope that you guys know that it's so important. It's needed. Arminthia, I really sympathize with you. I understand, like I shared earlier, being the only Asian kid in a school of predominantly Hispanic and white kids, that was tough. It's tough. And I remember there was one experience where, kids were we were walking back to the school from something. I think we'd been like to lunch, because the lunchroom was in a different building than where our classroom was. And I think we were walking back from we must have been walking back from that, like either lunch or a pep assembly or something. I can't remember what. We were outside and kids were mocking me, some of the boys. It was always the boys, the boys were mocking me. And there was someone another boy was right up on my heels. I turned around and slapped him. Probably wasn't the best thing to do. And then there was the mocking from another group of boys was still going on. That ended us up all in the principal's office. And that was the first time where these 4 boys who had been targeting me, they got to see, because the principal got involved, because of the bullying.
Yeah.
It got a little better, but still, I mean, after 4 years, I was in 4th grade at this time. After 3 years of already being excluded, not included. I mean, it doesn't make everything. It doesn't make everything better.
No.
And I still struggled. And 5th grade was the last year I was in public school. But then after that, I shifted to in 6th grade, I started, a small Christian public school or a private school. And even though it was nice to be around things of the Lord, I still was the outsider. I was the kid that never had a clique, never fit in. And and I didn't really ever have any friends. I just kind of was everyone's friend, because I didn't like confrontation. I tried to get along, but people didn't really, it's just Melissa. She's just around.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just around type thing. So I just kept my head down on my studies. I wasn't athletic. I did participate in music programs, but I wasn't exactly the greatest. I just did it because I enjoyed it. It was something for me to do, and I enjoyed it. And I don't think I really found my niche in life until that was something that I could call my own, that I could be proud of, that I could really call my own, until I got into the healthcare industry, when I started practicing as an aide at 22. And even that was a learning curve. I wasn't accepted, and I had to learn to advocate for myself to get the training, because I had the training that I had in my first job was horrible, and I ended up getting fired. And so I felt like a failure. So it wasn't until I'd say I was in like halfway through my career where I finally found a job that, actually I worked night shift for 4 years. I learned so much and got a routine, and then got recognized for it. And then my last 2 jobs in my career where I was actually training aides, the last 8 years of my career, that was just incredible, where I got to actually train aides, be a senior CNA, because people liked my work ethic, but it took time. So that's the thing. It's like the thing with when you're dealing with, whether it's teasing, racism, abuse, an unexpected situation, another like health, like what you both have gone through, or I have too, and with my husband's health, I think that's the important thing is sometimes when we're going through that, we just feel alone and isolated and we don't feel seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's so important that we raise awareness. And that's why I love having you guys on. It's like, how can we make more women feel seen?
Yeah.
And that they're not alone, and that there's a way out for one. And then two, and I think what's cool with you is like, I can see like, even if they don't necessarily cling to the art, the concepts that you teach of like, you're seen, you're important, you're a human being, you have a special light, you have special talents. But here, so we're giving you that foundation. Okay, art isn't your jam. If you try it, that's okay. But we'll still stand by you and support you and keep you seen as you figure out the next chapter or figure out what does work for you to be seen, what does help you cope. Because I think that's important, right? It's like, even though there's no one size fits all approach or, one way that things have to be done or figured out, because we're individuals and human beings. Even you as a mother, daughter, doer, I know your personalities have to be a slightly different, similar, but different things help you. Amaranthia, the artist, Claire's the writer. It's still a creative outlet. It's still a way of creation and being creative, but it's different, and it's supposed to be different, right?
Yes.
It's supposed to be different. So we've touched on a little bit, Amaranthia, about how your art shows kind of took off, and then we touched on Claire with your writing. So give me a little backstory on, especially with where you're at now, because I really want to pitch the heck out of this launch that you have coming with your new website and rebranding and all this. So what is the journey behind Sista Creatives? Like, when was the first initial with the first wave, with the first version of the website launched, and then what has led to the rebranding for 2023 that y'all are in the process of doing now?
Right, Amaranthia will talk about as she finished how it started with
the origin
art show, and then
yes, because it's multifaceted. So to start off, like, once I went into online school, and as you said, it was very isolating. I did, I think, before middle school, like right before middle school,
13,
or like
15.
right in like 5th, 6th grade, I gained a scholarship at a local art school called Kimball Jenkins. And I got a full scholarship there at 11 years old. And I was taking adult classes. So adult, like human figure and watercolor, acrylics and stuff like that. And I got to meet some older artists in the community. And so when the bullying happened, that was kind of my support group. And not that I had issues there, again, being the only Black girl around a bunch of people in their 70s, 80s, 90s.
Older white women.
Older white women.
Oh dear.
I had issues, and don't get me wrong, but I had, I met this one artist who saw my work, Do You Know Who I Am? And was like, I want to help you get this out here.
This is beautiful. You need to get this out.
Yeah. And my mom and I presented to her, and she said, we need to get this out. And we rebranded it to I'm Proud of Who I Am. And that became this moving art show series
throughout the area, in different libraries. In different libraries in Merrimack County, New Hampshire. So we went to Chichester Library, Concord Library, NHTI libraries, so it's the local community college. Community college.
And then I had I was the youngest artist at Merrimack County Savings Bank. At their group show, and I was just going all over the place raising money for kids with the art. Like, every art piece I was sold, I believe, was the money was donated to kids who were struggling with health issues. There was a kid in Africa who was struggling, that I think,
a young man,
a young man,
sold art and helped him with that.
And so we kept doing that until, so that started like 2014, I think ended 2015, 2016. Because I was just tired, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore.
And you had to focus on homeschooling.
Yes, I had to focus on school. I was ramping up.
Yes, your education's important.
Yes, and I came from my mom, and she was like, okay, then we're done then. And she's always been there to support. If I was done with something, she's like, okay, let's go to the next thing. What do you want to do next? or do you just want to take time to rest? So I was finishing school, and then I was planning to go to college. I got into SCAD, and I took a gap year. So I was trying to go to college in like 2019. Then the pandemic hit. I decided not to go to college because I didn't have the accommodations that I needed for my mental and physical health issues, because I deal with chronic illness. And at the time I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but we have learned that it was actually panic disorder and the complex PTSD and agoraphobia over time. So I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting into college because of financially, I'm just not seeing the support I need for my disability. Then when the pandemic hit, everything changed because I had 2 art shows that I was going to do. One was for a comic called Emo Bunny that is about my experience with anxiety disorders. And it's this funny girl who has this anxiety monster that's personified. It's this monster that attacks her, and her emotional support animal that supports her, and a cat. And I had no idea what to do. And then next thing I know, this opportunity popped up with this group called Artivism in Massachusetts, and they were doing a show. It was actually for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I went and created this art series telling my story, called Surviving in Isolation, the Black Mental Health Experience. And it got through there, and I decided to work on a show with them and turn it into another BLM show. This is a movement, not a moment. We kept going with that. And then we're like, you know what, we need to make our own show. And so in 2021, we created Art in Mind. And we didn't really realize, but it was actually pulling from the whole I'm Proud of Who I Am
and
series.
Back to my college work.
Yes. And it was
nice.
It was called Reflections of Women, Femmes, and Our Mental Health During COVID. And we partnered with Brain Arts, an organization in Boston that we connected with over the pandemic. We raised $751 for them. And we had like 8 artists that told their stories through video. And we created a documentary, and we featured artists from around the world.
And about 30-something people came to the first event.
Yeah.
Show.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so we were like, okay, we want to continue with this. And we created Sista Creatives Rising from that. We realized, we work really well together. We want to make this bigger. We
saw the connection from past, present, future. That's our slogan, bridging gaps to the past, the present, and the future. And we saw that connection from my childhood, what's going on now, and that, wow, we could do something to make a difference in the future. And that's
that was the foundation. And unfortunately, like when we were about to launch, my mom started losing her mobility like 6 days after the launch in March of last year of Sista Creatives Rising. And then you could tell that
then I
story.
got cancer.
Yes.
So that's where we are now.
Wow. Isn't it cool though how God's so good, or whatever higher power you believe, not to be judgmental to you guys either. But isn't God so good at the full circle thing? Just when you think you're done, nope, keep going.
That's
You're
right.
not done yet. I'm not done with you yet. Even though you I think that's so cool for you, Amaranthia. It's like, even though you said you were done, and rightly so, we go through spurts where, gosh, we need to slow down and stop and pause and stay in tune with our body, because burnout is real. And if we have chronic illness, like I have hypothyroidism and IBS, so I certainly, have to, and I've been a caregiver for 3 years now, and being a stay-at-home mom and running a business. So you need to have a break once in a while. So, but isn't that interesting that when you stop and pause, sometimes that's when you get the most ideas, or when God will say, oh, you're stopping and pausing. Well, guess what? Here's another idea. You ready to run with it? Because we're going to start and do something different. And you're like, okay, I guess we're going this direction. So
that's right. So, we did the show. Everything was going well. We ended in September. We rested. We were so exhausted after that first show. And we were like, what the heck just happened? We couldn't believe what happened. And so I rested. And then I was getting, we
Sicker.
did a business course that took us into December or January, but I kept getting not slowing down, losing like my memory, sleeping a lot. That was November, December, January. And then in December, I learned that my mom had, I started getting messages on my phone that my mom had passed in Barbados. And by now, so my father died. I learned my father died. My brother's gone. He died at 32 from AIDS. I know my mom is gone. So I'm the only one that's left.
From the nuclear
From
family.
the nuclear family, from that family that where all the violence was. But I couldn't do anything because I was getting sick. And I had been estranged from my family. So I was like, I can't deal with anything right now. And I just didn't do anything. And my mom passed without me even being able to do anything. And I had to let that go. As a Buddhist, I realized that I had just accumulated a major karma by not dealing with my mom's situation or with my family situation. But I physically was so burnt out and getting so sick, I couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. So I came into January and I was mourning inside. I will never see my mom again. I'm the only one that's left from this nuclear family, even though it was violent and we had so many dysfunctions. It was the only family I know. So I'm left standing alone in the world, even though I have my child, and then my husband is there, I have a new situation, but I'm just alone. And so I came into that, and that was heavy on my heart, and understanding that some karma was going to hit me, but I didn't know when it was going to hit me because I didn't deal with my mom's situation. Mm-hmm. And then, boom, the karma hit, cancer, right on my back. And immediately we launched Sista Creatives because I had done the business course. We were about to go. I said, okay, as tired as I am, we have to do this. So did the website. We launched it 6 days before I ended up in the hospital or losing my mobility. Mm-hmm. And we launched it, and then I started losing my mobility. Started not having feelings in my legs and dragging, had to use a cane over those 6 days in March, the beginning of March. And then I fell down upstairs, and the cat, which is her emotional support animal, she saw me fall. It was early in the morning. And I told her, you have to go help mama, go get Amaranthia let her know that I'm not well. And she looked at me, oh, mommy's not well. She ran downstairs and started to scream, woke her up. And she got up and saw that. And I told her what happened. And then after that happened, a couple of days later, I woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 4:00, needed to go to the bathroom. And when I got up, my leg wouldn't move. So I got the cane and I dragged it halfway across the room. My bladder broke, and I'm like, oh my God, something's going on. I could feel the coldness creeping up. I got to the bathroom, sat on the toilet, and from 4 to 7 o'clock, I just sat there. How is this gonna go? I've been the main caretaker of everything in the home. My husband has to work all the time because he's a contract worker. We, contract worker, you're paid by the hours you work. So he had to work. And I'm like, all the bills and everything is taken care of by me. I run everything in the house. Amaranthia still have her health issues. We're still dealing with all these health issues. She still can't do a lot of stuff on her own. Who's gonna help her? From 4 to 7 o'clock, I was like, I'm holding on. And I chanted and I prayed and I said, get me through this. This is not happening. This is really not happening. And it happened. I got up off the toilet, crashed to the floor, couldn't move. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, I told Emma, call the ambulance. I can't anymore. And I let go. At that moment, I let go and I just let the higher power take over. And I said, you take me where this will take me. I have to have complete faith. And I said, Amaranthia, just give me my sutra books, my beads, give me my medicine, my wallet, and just get me something to give me my health drink, because I need to have something in my stomach because I don't know where this is taking me. The ambulance came, they got me off of the floor and they had to get me in a special chair, and they were asking me all these questions. My blood pressure was through the roof. They were checking to see if I had feeling, and the coldness kept coming up. Got to the hospital and they checked me in, and they were able to get me in the MRI, and they said, you have a massive growth on your spine. We don't know if we can take care of you here. And so I'm like, the world, everything is crashing around me now, continuously crashing. And I was like, what the heck is this? And by the evening, they said to me, got me into a room, a special room, and they said, we have to go now. You're losing mobility by the hour.
This is within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
we have to do an emergency surgery to get this thing. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it's going to be when we go in. So we don't know, 50% chance that you might not walk again.
Well, paralysis.
Paralysis. And I said to Emma, they talked to my husband and her on the phone.
Had
and
to sign paper.
Had to sign papers and directive for if I didn't come out and everything. And I'm like, no, and I'm signing, oh my goodness, I'm signing something to say if I don't come up, if I don't recover, what is going to happen? Immediately, everything flows, is in front of you, and nothing matters, but that moment brings you into presence right away. Okay. And so I just was like, okay, got to do this. I said, let's go. And in that time, I was waiting for them to come back for me. I said, okay, Emma, got on the phone. Let's do this. I told her how to do the budget for the hours that while I was waiting, got the budget done, told her where everything was, and give her a crash course on how to manage the house and everything.
In like 2 hours.
In 2 hours. And I said, I had to have the presence of mind. Yes, I'm going, but she's still gonna have to take care of all this stuff. Life goes on. And we got that. Then they got me. And just before I went into surgery, I just said, I've done my best. I've done a lot of work to get here. It's not been easy, but I have to have faith and confidence that I gave my daughter everything that I could give her, and she's going to be okay. Said, let's go. And the doctor said, are you ready? And I said, yeah. And I was gone. And 5 hours later, I come out and I'm in this room and I'm foggy and everything. And the nurse said, yeah, you made it. I said, but I need the phone. I need to call my daughter. I'm slurring. And I called her and I said, I'm back. And it began from there. Shortly after, my legs started moving and they were like, oh my goodness, how is this happening? This is unexpected. We have to keep moving right now. We have to get to rehab, and we have to get you to rehab. And they gave me a brace. So because my back, I couldn't move my back. I had like 30 something stitches down my upper spine. They said we got most of it, but some of it is still there. We had to send it out to different labs because we still don't know what it is, or we can't say what the prognosis is yet. And I was in hospital, then I went to rehab, and from March until, when was it?
What, October,
November?
November?
I had chemo, radiation, had to checks for my spine, x-rays, blood work, had to get my port checked in for chemo, done for chemo, had to get a bronchoscopy because when I had chemo, my lungs got infected by this bacteria, all kinds of things. And through it all, on paper, it looked crazy. When nurses saw my papers before they would meet me, they would be like, wow, this woman has a lot to deal with. I had nurses come into my home, and then when they would see me, they were like, oh my goodness, you don't look like how you look on paper. How are you? You are amazing.
You're glowing.
You're glowing. And they couldn't believe, because I just had this attitude in presence that I was not going to be defeated. I made it back, and I was never going to give up. I had something to do when I got out of there.
You were in the 1%.
I was in the 1% that came back from such a surgery.
And to walk
again. I started walking really quickly, and with my walkers and everything, being my occupational therapist, I would start doing things really quickly. And I just saw in my head, I am going to do this work. I saw myself on stage speaking really nice and slender because I had all this weight and I was like, I'm going to lose all this weight. I saw myself in this black outfit. I was talking to this room of people and I would visualize that as I kept coming. And I brought myself all the way back here. And now I'm walking. I use a cane only if I go outside or because I'm still dealing with balance and gait issues, but pretty much I'm walking and I've lost all that weight, that trauma weight that I carried for so many years, because I learned through the whole process that all that was the trauma. It just melted away. The cancer took everything with it. All that stuff is gone. And I started to really, in the hospital, they used my legal name, but I started to use my name Claire, which means bright. And that's why I use Claire. Claire is my middle name because it is of my new life, a new beginning.
I love it. I love it. And I would say, like whether it's karma, whether, whatever religion or faith that you believe, it's a light, and it's your faith is what sustains you.
Yes.
Your faith is what sustains you. I go back to the verse in the Bible for me, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And my theme verse for this year is actually 2 Samuel 22:31-33, and it talks about in those three verses about how God's timing is perfect. He is our rock. He is our rock, and he is our refuge. And I think for you are really in that moment of being presence of letting go, of saying, okay, God's higher power, whatever you choose to insert there. Yeah. It's like, it's not about me. It's about you. I choose to let you take over and take control. And whatever happens. And I put faith and trust, because that's what faith is. It's letting go of you and having control of the reins and letting God, your faith, whatever, again, insert whatever you will here, guys, take control.
That's right.
So how can you get out of the way? My theme word is surrender. And I think that's so important. We have to surrender the timeline it takes for our health to grow, surrender the timeline it takes for us to heal from trauma, surrender the timeline that it takes for us to establish our businesses, and just trust that we will get to where we're supposed to be in the time that we're supposed to be and do it. Right. We have to learn different skills, and different things. I'm 3 years into my business. I'm still really growing and learning and figuring out how I can be the best coach and mentor and start expanding my clientele and my content. But that's okay. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And I don't want to skip over this. It would be a huge disservice to both of us. I think we'd agree if we tried to jump to point D, if we hadn't stopped, paused, and taken the time to get through steps A, B, and C in order to build on those skills and that foundation that we need. Otherwise, when we get to point D, it's going to be a house of cards, because we haven't laid the foundation. We haven't learned, we haven't grown, we haven't figured out, and by trying things and figuring out what works and what doesn't, it's a process, and it's supposed to not be something that happens overnight, right? So I think I am so excited for you guys. You guys are going to have an amazing year. I believe that.
I feel that.
Your story is going to help so many people. And I think that's what's cool about the online world, is that there's this, because it's interesting. I've been working with my business coach for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in October. And I'm a part of an international community there. I have people from all over the world that I get to co-coach and also be and learn from, and my business coach is based on the East Coast, and she's American, but still, I'm learning from so many different people. And I think that it is so cool with the online space that we get to meet people. Like, I'm sitting across the table. I'm sitting on a Zoom right now, being able to record this podcast episode and to inspire you guys. And I'm getting to talk with you guys. I would not have met you guys if I hadn't launched my podcast, and you guys wouldn't have applied for the application. So
I would not have been here if the pandemic hadn't happened. We wouldn't have tried this if the pandemic hasn't forced us to go inward and find new ways to come back out.
Yeah, for me, I think the catalyst wasn't the pandemic was part of it, but I think for me more the catalyst was I was looking for something to do online that would be flexible with my husband, with the needs of my now 4-year-old, which is crazy to say, and my husband's health with his epilepsy. So that was really the catalyst to me. So, finding something that could be in my scope of practice since I didn't have a BA, I didn't have a bachelor's, I didn't have X amount of years and all the other positions that I was researching about. And I also had the problem too, like a lot of the positions were, because of the pandemic, like you said, they were going remote because of it. But there was the understanding, like after the pandemic quiets down, we're going back to on-site. And like, that doesn't make sense. I need to be a stay-at-home mother and a primary caregiver for my husband and take care of my little girl. That's not going to work. So having to be creative and think outside the box. And when I started, I had no clue what I was doing. And my business is so different than when I started. I started with like a mom blog. Hello, mom blog. And it's turned into now where I'm building a coaching practice, you know, helping moms who are struggling with going through that transition phase now. So it's totally different than what I thought it would be, but that's okay. You know, you learn from trying and doing, and I've ditched that first website and that blog, but now I'm doing something. I have a new website and it's so different, and it's what I'm getting a whole different direction for where I'm going with my work, and that's okay. So, and I know you guys are too, from the initial doing art shows and your first website, and then now you're shifting to where you know, really helping women figure out who they are and how they can, and that they're more than their trauma, they're more than their past selves, they're more than their past experiences. And I think that's so beautiful. So so I want you to interject some wisdom here, some tips. What are 3 tips that you would give our listeners if they're realizing that maybe they're in a season where they're realizing they're burnt out, or they're realizing that maybe the underlying theme here, since you guys do focus on bullying and trauma, what could be some red flags that they could be really stopping and pausing and maybe checking in with themselves about, that maybe I'm not like you, Claire, like maybe I really haven't dealt with all the trauma and the pain and the anger and the grief and the mourning I have related to my my experiences of going through trauma or abuse or neglect. So I want to hear from both of you. So what would be 3 tips that you would say that could be a starting point for our listeners if they're not sure of how to even start their healing journey?
For me, I would say finding a therapist or some kind of support group is crucial. That is major tip number 1. I struggled from when I was 17 to like 2021 trying to find a therapist. And because I didn't understand the race part of my experience. So I had to, I wasn't getting diagnosed properly. So I had to keep looking and looking and looking. So I cycled through a couple therapists. And I would definitely recommend finding a therapist online that there's mental health resources like I forgot what it's called, but I think there's something called Therapy for Black Girls.
I think it's that.
And I looked through that, and they give resources for any marginalized women and femmes, LGBT, disabled, etc., to look for a therapist. There's other resources as well, which I've just found through like scrolling through Facebook and Instagram, sometimes just looking through hashtags of like, where's a support group that I can go to that's free? Where can I find a therapist, like an art therapist? And through like looking through art therapist hashtags, I found my current therapist I've had for going on 2 years now. So it's constantly advocating for yourself as well, and realizing I need help. I'm repeating patterns that are unhealthy. I was repeating patterns of not setting boundaries because of the bullying that happened. And so I've been able to work with my therapist to work through these things of like, how do I set boundaries when you're doing a project like this, when you're working with other women who are dealing with trauma, who are dealing with sometimes what Eckhart Tolle, famous writer and speaker, he says, the pain body. How to make sure you're not bringing your pain body into situations, and how to kind of block out people who are bringing their pain body to you while still being able to help them.
Yes.
So that's been a major part. When you're doing caretaking, when you're doing outreach projects, when you're doing community projects, you have to be able to find a therapist, a coach, a support group,
supports
whether
you.
free or paid, that
Yeah.
understands you and supports you. And it could take a long time, but just keep searching and have the faith, have that you will find the right person. I would say, yeah, those two things, finding therapy, self-advocacy, and I would say with a major thing, it's burnout. So my third thing would be advocating, not advocating, but being able to find other outlets. So if you're creative, but and you're like an artist, right? You draw, you paint, or maybe you're a writer. You don't always have to create in that way. So when my mom was sick, I wasn't able to draw for over a year, like properly. I'm still getting back into it. But what I did with my mom was like, I'm gonna film what she's going through. And so I just kept filming and filming, and I started taking photos. I kept
documenting.
And I kept decorating her equipment with like washi tape and gluing on like flowers and stuff like that. And so even though I wasn't able to draw and have that kind of art therapy I do with my work, I found another outlet by realizing, I could document and I can use my creativity to help me feel better, to help my mom feel better through decorating, through arts and crafts. And so I was able to still heal through art, but if there's other ways to express yourself. Another thing too we found was coloring.
Yeah, coloring, Zentangle.
Yeah, and just speaking to other artists in the community who were going through things similar. We had meetings with people who
networking,
who understood chronic illness, who understood cancer. So there's more than one way to be creative.
That's right.
And that's okay if you're an artist and you have been burnt out and you haven't been able to do your traditional work.
I love that. I love that because and that ties in with where I'm at actually too. Like I'm a knitter, and I haven't really consistently knitted since before my daughter was born. And that was like 4 years ago. So, and with everything that's gone on with me from December 2019, when my husband started getting sick, then we got shut down from, it was the year of hell for us. It was the perfect storm. My husband got sick in December of 2019. We shut down from the pandemic, January into March. And then my husband's health just started to rapidly decline April into May. And then by May, I was on medical leave. And then by July, I was quitting my job and figuring out my new career. So it was really fast in the span of less than a year. And I did not prioritize my outlet, my creative outlet and everything during that time. And I'm still getting back onto that. And I went through, and because I even didn't prioritize my physical wellness, I ended up going undiagnosed with IBS for all of 2021. And then 2022 has been really focusing now on the anger, the anxiety, the spiritual growth, and lack of being consistent with my time with the Lord and figuring it, and also just struggling all my life. I was raised in the church. I'm a former pastor's daughter. So finally finding what works for me and how I get that time with the Lord and doing all this inner work. I love what you said too. I'm going to get to you in a minute, Claire, but I really love how what Amaranthia said about documenting and advocating. That is so perfect with what my Christian life coach teaches, because she uses SPADE. It's like SMART goals, but it's really, surrender, plan and pray, accountability, document, and then evaluate. And that's so true with our self-care too. How can we, block out that time where we're consistent, Amaranthia, with being creative, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. That's what my coach is, trying to get me to do. Even if I just set a timer and those boundaries, like you said, when my daughter wants to play with me, one thing we did with my wellness wheel was, okay, 15 minutes, I'll set a timer for 15 minutes. Okay. And that gives me the boundary of saying, okay, Linda, when mommy's done with her 15 minutes of knitting, when the timer goes off, you get mommy back. But mommy wants to have 15 minutes to nurture her creative outlet here and give herself a mental break by doing this, and then accountability, again, like you touched on it, a coach, a therapist, or a support group, having that accountability, like, okay, how did you do this week? Did you make sure you blocked out your 15 non-negotiable 15 minutes of you time or creative time or whatever that is, or whatever other things you are wanting to work on, and you want to have the accountability of like, I want to stay on track, but I know I'm human, I make mistakes, but I want to have someone call me out and say, hey, are you doing what you said you were going to do? Boom. And then also just being open to other outlets of being creative. Like you said, if you're in a season, I would say my business has been definitely a creative outlet for me since because of everything. So it's been something that's mine, and it brings me joy, and it definitely is an outlet. But that's the season I'm in now. It could be different later. So just because you're running with something now that works for you, it doesn't mean that's going to necessarily be something that runs with you later. So I love that. I love that you touched on that. So Amaranthia, I think that's going to really help some people just start, right? Just be accountable with having support, and just being open to getting creative with how they can be creative in a season. Like you said, when you were dealing with your mother being sick, okay, I'm not going to have time to art and draw, but that's okay. I'm going to figure out a way that's realistic for the season I'm in to be creative. And you did that. And I'm so proud of you for that. That is awesome.
My walker has like the lotus on it. My cane has cherry blossoms on it. Everything. She just decorated everything. So when I went out, I felt good because all of my aids were so funky.
I love it. I love it. Creative, your unique personality. Okay, so Claire, what are your 3 best tips that you would want to share with our listeners?
Well, first thing, for someone who has gone through so much overwhelming trauma and just crises, the most important, there are 3 things, but the top of my list is that connection with spirit. I don't know, people have different ways to do it. Not everyone's religious, or not everyone is spiritual or whatever, but find that way of getting into presence.
Yes.
The real you, because that's what got me through the hospital, the whole crisis. But in 2015, when this started and they found a marker for me having this type of cancer, myeloma, back then is when I really started thinking that I needed to go deeper. And so I created this Instagram page called Clarity is Just So Hit. And under there, I would design all of these paintings, photo paintings. I would take pictures of clouds and then manipulate them, and then they would come out in these beautiful photos. And I would post those. And on the Clarity is Just So Hit, I also came up with this 5-step practice called Clarity, Awareness, Presence, Acceptance, and Gratitude. And on the Clarity, Awareness, Presence, Acceptance, and Gratitude is where, when I felt in crisis, I would go into that space. I would chant, I would pray, but I would run everything that was bothering me through Clarity, Awareness, Presence, Acceptance, and Gratitude. So this situation, how can I get clear on it? Okay, and I would meditate on that. Okay, bring me into awareness of how this situation is making me feel. Connect all the dots with all my emotions. How is this bring me into awareness? And then presence. Okay, standing still, feeling the moment, feeling all in my 5'2" body. What is going through me? What's going on? How is this thing making me feel?
Yeah.
Right? Acceptance, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. I would use that acceptance about whatever is going on. And then gratitude. Gratitude is like being grateful that this lesson has been brought to me. No matter how difficult it is, it's something that's going to make me grow. Okay. So I would do that, whatever crisis would come up, with my art, with everything, and I would pull that together. Wash, rinse, repeat, true clarity, awareness, presence, acceptance, and gratitude, my meditation, and it would bring a calmness for me. 1, 2, writing, journaling, listening to videos, inspirational authors or speakers like Eckhart Tolle, Louise Hay. I equip myself with my chanting, with Louise Hay's Love Your Body, Heal Your Body. I could always mess it up. Heal Your Body audio tape. And I had my headphones throughout my whole experience at the hospital. I would listen to her heal your body over and over again, do my meditation, do my clarity, awareness, presence, acceptance, and gratitude. Listen to Eckhart Tolle for inspirational talks, and sometimes Oprah Winfrey, listen to old speeches from other people that were out there sending out positive messages. So finding positive things in your environment and through social media or whatever. I would go through Instagram and look for food because I couldn't eat a lot of things. So I would look for pictures of videos of people who were putting out dishes and stuff like that. And that would make me feel good. And then third, self-care.
Yes.
Find a little bit of time every day to care for yourself.
Yep.
Then I wake up in the morning, first thing I say, thank you, I'm here to see, and I'm grateful to see another day. I put on my soothing videos that show nature because I couldn't get outside. So they're beautiful YouTube videos that you can watch, and they take you to sunrises, sunsets, they take you into the ocean, beautiful things like that. I always find a positive quote or something that would keep me grounded and keep me in presence. And I just exercise, make sure I'm eating well, drinking a lot of water, and trying to nap during the day. So those three things. So
I love it.
My spiritual thing with clarity, awareness, presence, acceptance, and gratitude, meditating, finding presence, the writing, the journaling. I would journal on LinkedIn as I went through the hospital, and so I can get my story out, and the self-care of
Yes.
a little bit during the day to take care of yourself.
I think too, when all this was happening, when she had the marker for multiple myeloma, which is very deadly, rare cancer, blood cancer. And so when she got diagnosed
in 2015,
when you got diagnosed last year, it turned out to be lymphoma, which is a highly treatable
so
cancer.
The doctors were shocked. They were like, we were looking that this was myeloma because that's what they told me it could be in 2015.
It's very easy to treat compared to myeloma, which is
it didn't get into my lymph nodes. This type of cancer could get into your lymph nodes or whatever. It was outside and it was on my back. And that brings us back to the beginning. I thought, well, this is on my back. This is really a metaphor for my life. All the burnout, everything is the cancer ended up on my back because I was carrying so much. I was carrying so much and I couldn't carry no more. So it manifested itself in this big thing on my back.
And so I feel like those practices that you had, they really got her through. They really got her through.
Absolutely.
And I learned to love myself.
Right. Okay. And I think that's so important. I love that, Claire. Thank you for sharing. I love where you took that because I think that's so important. Like, okay, self-care is not a treat. It's a necessity. And it's such a buzzword on the internet for years. And I am sick of it being seen as a treat, as a reward. It is necessary. And I love how you really tied into, I see some similarities because having your non-negotiable self-care times throughout the day is so critical. For me, for my religion of how I practice my faith, my non-negotiable is I come into my office, I have my water, I have my tea, and I do my program that I do with my coaches. And it's inner work, but it's spiritual inner work from this perspective. It's not secular, it's more spiritual where we're tying in the Bible. And so I'm really starting to dig into the Bible more with researching verses that will help me work with different things that's coming up that the Lord's showing me. Like, I like how my coach is terming it in the program I'm doing right now, where they're calling them leaks, and they're calling them leaks because thinking about our plumbing and like if we don't fuel our body or manage taking care of the machine or our body well, we're going to have leaks, and then it's going to be tougher to cope and be able to show up and be the moms, the wives, and the spouses and caregivers or whatever many hats or ambitious online creators like what we're choosing to be. Insert anything. And I think it's been really awesome where I've really learned that for me, doing prompt journaling is something that really works well for me. Doing devotions with a little bit of a video, and then doing some prompt journaling after that and answering questions and like being kind of led that way, and then tying in, looking for a themed verse that goes with that thing that I'm wanting to work on, that's a leak or something that I'm struggling with or that I need, and I need, like you say, like with similar to Buddhism, again, releasing that back to the Lord. It's like, Lord, I can't do this on my own strength. I need you to take control of the wheel and help me figure out how to navigate this and just consistently rinse and repeating, like you say, taking it back, surrendering, praying through it, planning like a little, okay, help me create a plan for how I can stop the leaks and not be living in this unhealthy way, like Araminthia was saying, this unhealthy chronic way of trying to cope with it when it's really not a healthy way to cope. And then having that accountability with support, coach, mentor, support group, and documenting, writing videos, however you want to do it, and to be held accountable. I have my workbooks, is how I kind of document, and then evaluate, okay, where am I at now? How am I progressing through this process of really taking a deep nosedive into prioritizing and reconnecting with myself and where I need to be aligned with the Lord or with your faith or wherever the trajectory of where you feel like you're going in your journey is. Where, is it getting better? So can I tweak things, or am I still really having a bad leak that instead of it being little, now it's really snowballing and I need to address something bigger? Like Claire's version of that, everything manifesting in her back, and just then it really manifesting in a unhealthy way with her health. So it's really important, guys. Okay, it's really important, self-care and really being connected with yourself and listening to your spiritual. I know they say physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. I've really gotten into the thing of spiritual first. Yeah, physical or spiritual first, then physical, then mental, then emotional, because your spirituality is really what sets the tone for everything else. If you're staying aligned spiritually and connected with your faith, everything else will fall into place. I really firmly believe. So are you staying in alignment with that? I think is really what it comes down to. So anyway, what is something that we have talked about either in our conversation, or what is maybe a quote or something, or a short story, because we're almost at an hour and a half. I can't believe we've talked this long, but it's been amazing. But it's awesome. I love it. It was meant to happen. This was meant to happen, and this conversation will really help somebody. So it's okay. It's all good. So what is something that's either happened in the conversation we've had today, or again, just a truth or an experience or something that's just really stuck with you in your own journeys, that has just helped you that's just really motivated you to keep going? So I don't care who starts. So either one of you can take over here.
Okay, well, I'm going to say two quotes that inspired me. One, the quote that began all this was from Georgia O'Keeffe, and it's one of her quotes. I might butcher it, but it's like, it's not about what I've been, but it's what I've done with where I've been that should be of importance. And yes, I want people to learn, to know about this story and how I've come through it and how I'm standing strong and looking forward to the future. But I want people to know that I didn't like myself very much. And I was a survivor, and I operated from a place of desperation. The person that I was before, I'm not that person now. And I live my life in clarity in using my name, Claire, because I want to live in a place that is filled with light and brightness and bring that to the world. So it's not about where I've been, it's about what I've done with where I've been. Although I came from domestic violence and stuff, and look what I've done with that life. The second thing is from Eckhart Tolle. I was listening to his audiobook, Stillness Speaks. I started listening to that, and he had a quote. I think it went like, it's about better and worse things happen all the time, but the worst things are more obvious. I'm paraphrasing, because worse makes more noise.
Right.
Worse makes more noise. So we look around, we look like everything is going to hell in a handbasket. It's crazy, but you got to remember, even as all that craziness is happening, every single day, people like me are in the hospital being taken care by wonderful doctors and nurses who get up every single day, have problems in their own lives, but yet still they're on time to come and take care of a patient like me that is going through that type of crisis. So
absolutely.
Worse things happening. We have all this stuff in the world, but every day those hospitals are functioning. Right now, as I speak, it doesn't stop. And they're taking care of the afflicted every single day. Better things are happening. And people like me are coming back to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you today. And
Absolutely.
To get inspiration.
Amen. Well said. How about you, Amaranthia? What would you like to share?
Well, I really like in this conversation, you said something about the time and the season of like,
Mhm.
you know, I can't remember the exact thing, but it really stuck with me of, you know, having these crises and being like, yeah, how do I navigate this? And realizing that, you know, when you go through different seasons, like sometimes you have to shift. You know, winter turns into spring. That's one of the quotes from our practice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Winter always
I like
turns
that.
into spring.
Yeah. And so you always have to shift. And when there's something that is very, you know, cold and dark and you feel like there's not a lot of hope, you can always shift into something bright and, you know,
Because light and bright is always
healing.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a way to shift into that. And if you need help shifting into that, there's help out there, whether from community or, like I said, therapists, coaches, support groups.
Mhm.
And the shifting into realizing, you know what, I need that self-care. I need that 15 minutes. I need that time,
Mhm.
you know, maybe a couple hours to just focus on myself, or, hey, let me find a way to express myself differently.
Mhm.
If I'm not able to express myself in the way I've always done. I
Right.
really love what you were saying about the knitting, that, you know, your kid and what's happening with your husband has made it really hard to get back into that creativity, and having that coach tell you, well, find that 15 minutes, you know, start writing things down, start journaling, start reflecting. I that kind of sticks with me right now too, because now I want to be able to utilize that, because I've been so busy with, you know, launching Sista Creatives and getting everything out there. I'm like, I have to take like maybe an hour to just work on something, to breathe, just to watch it
Yes.
go,
Yes.
Yeah.
And
To watch
it
our
doesn't have
Korean dramas.
exactly right. It does. And what is realistic to you? This is what I tell my moms all the time, Amaranthia. What is realistic to you? Do you need 15 minutes? Do you need an hour? Do you
Mhm.
need just need a break and get out of the house? Okay. That's where I want you to start making your plan and play, you know, like it says in Spade, of uh calling your family or friends. Hey, I really need a break. Can you come and sit with my husband and my daughter? I'll use me as an example. Come and watch my kid and my husband for an hour while I run to Starbucks and just have an hour to myself to get a coffee, or I have lunch with a friend. Okay. Asking for help and advocating, like you said, this is back to you right there. Asking for help and advocating for yourself is not a bad thing,
No.
especially if it gives you that 15 to 30-minute break or window that you need, right? And part of being able to be diligent with that is setting up those boundaries. That's another thing that, you know, that's something I've been really working on. Is I had my coach just had us do a module actually where we actually went out, we figured out our leaks in one module, and then the next one was like, okay, we know what those leaks are. So what's the boundary that we can fix? Okay, so what's the boundary? What's the implementation of how we're going to navigate, how we're going to implement that boundary? And then who do we need to have to hold us? Do we need to tell to help either help us implement it or to help us stay accountable to it? And then fourth, since it's spiritual, you know, with my faith, having a guiding verse to reference when we're struggling with that boundary. Okay, I set this boundary and this is the truth biblically and spiritually, that I want to be in the presence of God and honor my body as a temple and my life by doing it. So, you know, it's all culminates with, surrendering, planning and praying, accountability.
Gratitude.
Yeah. So journaling, meditation. I know Claire, I love this. You said you were listening to a lot of podcasts and video books. The thing that I've been doing more lately is my coaches started encouraging us. They gave me a few artists to look at on YouTube of Christian contemporary artists to build a worship playlist. Well, I've just been running with that. I've just been really enjoying that because these are artists I didn't know, and I love this music, because some of this music that I'm finding on through these artists is actually stuff that we do in our Sunday worship services. And it's just been great. Like I was actually listening to some of that when I was doing my workbook sheets for my devotional lesson this morning. I had that going as I was starting to look for my prompt verses to go along with the exercise that I had for today. And that was just inspiring, just getting into God's word, hearing the motivational worship music, that was setting a tone. Like you said, like was for you, like you were saying, like, doing the calming images on YouTube, to calm you and soothe you. For me, that's my place of just hearing God's anthem through music, through worship. Yeah. So
Solitudes, those videos.
Yeah, exactly. So what does that look like for you guys? Obviously, we're sharing kind of what works for what is working for us, I should say, in the seasons that we're in, guys. But where do you need to start? What works for you? Is it maybe listening to a podcast, creating a podcast playlist of stuff that you can just listen to again and again and again? Is it a worship playlist on YouTube? Is it journaling? Is it really blocking out those boundaries and having that conversation with your family of, listen, like, I really need to being more consistent with having a mental and emotional break, creative break. So every day at like 6 p.m. or whatever, or at least or sometime in the evening, when my timer goes on, I need your support to help me navigate that, to honor and protect that boundary of that 15 minutes, that hour, whatever it is, to do X, Y, and Z, whether it's journaling, whether it's knitting or artwork like Amaranthia and I choose to do, whether it's even just having some sort of other break. Okay. It all starts with you, but it also starts with you taking action. Action creates clarity to prioritize yourself. You have to put yourself first. If you don't put yourself first, it's a house of cards. You're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, that's what I learned through this whole journey, because I was like putting everybody first, and then I, at that moment on the toilet when I at 7, I was like, "Oh, you got to put yourself first now. You got to take care of you." And that's when I let go, and it's okay.
It is okay. It's going to be scary. I'm not saying
exactly
that it's not scary. Okay,
it could be one of the scariest things you ever do.
It can. Putting yourself first. It's really like we talk, like, well, Claire, I'm just thinking about what you said about how you didn't like yourself.
No.
When you're doing this inner work, you don't like acknowledging that you're angry. You don't like acknowledging that you can't control it, and that you're resentment, or that you're anxious. You don't like acknowledging that you're not all you cracked up to be.
Exactly.
That's not the fun part of the journey. For anyone listening, I said, we're not perfect. We're human beings and human bodies. We make mistakes. We do our best, but sometimes we fail.
Yes. Facing you could be the scariest thing. Facing you.
Yep. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because, there's a lot that you could be suppressing and not willing to deal with. And then something like this, what happened to me, comes along. I came out of it, and I was like, man, I always say this: don't let life get ahead of you. Get ahead of life before it gets ahead of you.
Absolutely. We should just put that. We just plaster that all over the internet. You just started the quote. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a long conversation, but I have loved every minute of it. As we close out, where can we find more Claire and Amaranthia? Because I want people to know where you guys are at. Where can we follow more of Claire and Amaranthia?
You go, Emma.
Yes. So we just launched our Instagram, Sista Creatives Rising. Our website is Sista Creatives Rising as
LinkedIn.
Well. LinkedIn, it's all the same.
Sista Creatives Rising.
And right now, we're just getting into the groove of things. We're posting clips of podcasts. We're going to be posting more about what we do.
Information, facts, statistics.
Yeah, about
awesome.
Women and femmes in the arts and how they're not represented. Our mission is to help women and femme creatives gain accessibility and visibility in the arts so they can facilitate their own personal healing. And so we are just working on that through launching our new art show for the next Art in Mind. We're launching the next part, which is I Know Who I Am. Which I know who I am. That I Know Who I Am ties into the Do You Know Who I Am and I'm Proud of Who I Am project. So it's going to be the final chapter for that particular anti-bullying project. And we're highlighting Black women and femmes who've gone through disability, who've gone through crises, mental health issues, and have used art to heal. So that's going to be launching in June. And
Not my birthday month. Oh, happy birthday to me. I can't wait to. What's the date? Do you have a date locked in June? When is it?
Well, the submission, the open call starts in June, and then the show will be
September,
in September, October.
Okay.
And that again is partnered with Brain Arts Org in Boston, and we're working together to be able to pull this together and fundraise for them. And they're going to be helping us compensate artists. So the 5 artists that we pick are going to be paid. And yeah, it's just going to be this whole feature with having a therapist, speaker, having a disability advocate,
the artist,
and Black women just being able to have a platform to tell their stories who've gone through things similar to us. And
Black women and women through the diaspora, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, Black women from America, internationally, who have gone through these things and have, championed and, have won through these crises.
Yes, and now they know who they are.
Yeah.
They know.
And so part of that too is because I've been documenting my mom's story, is a documentary about her journey, a 20-minute documentary showcasing what she went through, showing how she became that 1% to walk again after such a high-risk surgery. And so we're very excited to pull that together, but you won't see more of that until like May or June. But
oh my gosh, you guys. You guys have so much coming this year. I told you at the beginning of this interview, you guys are going to have a massive year. You guys are going to have a massive year. So, all right.
So go to sistacreatives.com and you'll get it all from there. LinkedIn, Instagram, same thing across all social media.
Awesome. Yes. So all those links I'll include those in the show notes below. So be sure to check all those goodies out. And definitely make sure that you're following Amaranthia and Claire on Instagram at Sista Creatives Rising. They're amazing. So, and Instagram is also where I hang out. So if you want daily tip videos, encouragement tidbits, hacks, you can find your girl at Melissa Miller 2011. And if you, speaking of prioritizing yourself in 2023, if you are struggling right now with getting back on the bandwagon with your whole body self-care routine, or you haven't even started one and you're in a flare or burnout, I can help you. I have a brand new workshop, called STEM, Prioritizing Self-Care in 2023. And that drops on January 23rd. I'll leave a link below as well, so you can check out and sign up for that. And guys, I just want you to remember that whatever we've talked about, whatever has resonated with you in our coffee chat conversation today, is that you're not alone. You're doing the best you can. You know your family and yourself more than anybody, better than anybody. And that you're allowed to give yourself grace on those hard days as a mom, as a caregiver, but also as a human being. Okay. Like I said, if you've gotten nothing from this call, from this interview, it's that we're going to mess up. We're human beings. We have our good moments and our bad moments. But the road to healing, yes, yeah, and the road to healing is possible. Claire and Amaranthia are proof of that. I'm proof of that. But the journey goes on. It's not one and done. We're daily still for anything. We're still on the road to healing in our unique journeys, and that's okay. And that you are not alone. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please like, follow, and subscribe so you'll be notified when the next episode goes live. And thank you again to Claire and Amaranthia for being my special guest this week. And stay tuned. I got a bonus episode coming on Friday, but I'm not going to tell you who, because it's a surprise. So check it out. Stay tuned. And remember that you guys are doing an amazing job as busy moms, busy caregivers, and beautiful human beings. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.